All right, so suppose the circle, the center of our circle is at 2, 2, and its radius, oh, whoops, sorry, let's go back, and its radius passes through 0, 2. What happens if the radius is divided by 4? Now, you could go through and take a look at this circle, and you could say, well, what is the radius now? The radius is 2, okay? So what would happen if we divided that radius by 4? Well, that would shrink our circle down. It would be very short, okay? If we divided it by 4, that would make our radius 2 divided by 4. It would just be a half. Okay, it was 2, we divided by 4, and we got a radius of a half. Okay, so what would that do? Well, what would that do for our circumference? And what would that do for our area for our circle? Well, we can take a look at it. We have an actual example here, so we can take a look and say, okay, what did happen to their circumference? Okay, so what was the original circumference of that original circle? Well, it had a radius of 2, and the circumference is 2 times pi times the radius, which would be 2 times pi times 2. We can go ahead and multiply those 2's and get 4 pi. Let's look at our new circle. With our new circle, we have a radius of 1/2. Our 2 divided by 4 gave us a half. So for our new circumference, it's 2 times pi times our radius of 1/2. Again, we can go ahead and multiply those. 2 times a half is just 1 pi. Okay, so what happened to our radius? Our original was 4, and our new one is 1. If you want to look at the effect, you take the new size divided by the original. Okay, so our new was 1 pi, and our old one was 4 pi. It's 1/4 what it used to be, and which is exactly what dividing by 4th is. Okay, it's doing 1/4 of something. So we really could have used our example up here. It says if you multiply by the dimensions by a number, then the circumference changes by that same number, 1/4, 1/4, and the area should change by that number squared. So let's take a look at our area. What was our original area? Well, in the original, we do pi times radius squared. Our original circle had a radius of 2. So our area also was 4 pi originally. What about for the new figure? What's its area? Well, again, area is pi times the radius squared. And our radius, if we divide by 4, is just a half. 1/2 times 1/2 gives us a 4th. Okay, so we go from, instead of being 4 pi, it's now 1/4 pi. Again, to do that, you take the new divided by the original, so the new area is 1/4 pi. The old area is 4 pi. And what happens here is we get 4 times 4 in the bottom. It's 1/16 its original value. So again, we could have just used this rule up here that when you change the dimensions, what happens? The perimeter or circumference changes by a factor of a, which it did. Our a was 1/4. And the area is supposed to change by a factor of a squared, which it did. 1/4 squared is 1/16. Okay, so you really can, if you're changing both dimensions of something, you really can just use this rule. All right, let's take a look at this example. A square has a perimeter of 48 millimeters. If the area is multiplied by a 4th, what happens to its side length? Okay, so this is going backwards. Okay, so I'm going to guess what's going to happen here, and then I'll prove it by showing you the example. It says the area is multiplied by a fourth. So we're looking at the effect on the area instead because that's what they gave us. Okay, so if the area is multiplied by a fourth, what happens to the side length? So how did that happen? What happened to the side length to make the area 1/4 of its size? Okay, well, we're going backwards. We're going from squaring, we're trying to unsquare something, and unsquaring something is taking the square root. So we take the square root of 1/4, which when you're doing that with a fraction, you can just split them up. The square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 2 is 2. So the side length should be a half of the original. We can try this out. Okay, if the perimeter of a square is 48, that means it has 4 equal sides. 4 divided by 4 is 12. So that means each side must be 12 if the perimeter of a square is 48. What would its area be? Okay, its area would be 12 times 12, or 144. Okay, what if we took that area and divided it by 4? Okay, because that's what they're saying happens. What if the area is multiplied by a fourth? Okay, so let's take that area. We're going to multiply it by a fourth, or divide by fourth, same thing, and we get 36. Okay, so now we have an area, a square, that has an area of 36. What times itself equals 36? Well, 6 times 6 to get 36. All right, so what happened to our side length? It went from 12 to being 6. But again, you can just use the rule up here. Now, if they tell you something that happened to the area, whatever it was, what happens to the perimeter and to just the dimensions would be take the square root of that number. If it says the area changes by a factor of 25, what happens to my circumference and my side length? It's the square root of that. It's multiplied by 5.